Welcome back to another episode on the BMTA's Maritime Careers and Training podcast. And today we are doing another episode on Cadet Diaries, but this time we are looking at training for engine. So I'm really pleased to welcome two current engineering cadets, Eddie Vann and Sophie MacLeod. Eddie, could you just start off, introduce who you are, the company you are currently training with, and a bit of background about how you got into a cadetship?
Yep, so my name's Eddie. I'm currently training with Marella Cruises under Watermark. I got into the cadetship because I was looking for a new career. My granddad mentioned the RFA at first, so I found the Merchant Navy, came to an open day at Selby University.
And Sophie, what about yourself?
I am with Fred Olson Cruise Line, and I got into the engineering side via my dad. He's a chief engineer on yachts at the moment, and he was in the Navy. He's basically said, "Oh, there's lots of cadets coming through. They've got really good training," and basically filtered me through there. Found people that I knew that were doing the cadetship, and yeah,
Here you are.
yeah.
So Eddie, you're on the H&D route, the Higher National Diploma, and Sophie, are you on the bachelor's?
Yes.
Yeah, so two different courses, so different sort of ideas there. Eddie, from a H&D point of view, why did you go through the H&D route as opposed to the foundation or the bachelor's?
So I think it's a bit different for me because, as you probably remember, I was originally on the foundation degree. So I originally applied for BEng bachelor's. I was told by my company they didn't offer it at the time, so I got into the foundation degree. And when I turned up, obviously I'd had a few years out of education, and I decided that because the way it was first described to me was that if you start off from the foundation of the bachelor's, you start off sort of at a higher level. And because of my time out of education, I wasn't sure how good of an idea that was. So I went for the H&D because it might have been a bit more of a smooth ride at first. Sort of give me a better introduction and a better chance at continuing.
Yeah, so on the H&D, you obviously went through what we call the academic ramp, which sort of gives you the level 3 before going straight into the level 4 and level 5. Again, similar to the deck H&D route, it gives you that period of time to get back into education, build up those skills in maths and sciences that you might have not had been out of education for a while. Sophie, what was your sort of reason for going straight in at the BEng?
Well, I wasn't quite sure, to be honest. I was actually supposed to go on the HND because I wasn't confident on my more to do with the maths and the academic level. But then my company said, "Oh, there's a spot in the bachelor's degree," and I was like, "Well, might as well go for it." Yeah, I don't know because I lived in France and I did all my schooling in France. I was very nervous changing the entire language.
It's certainly no matter what the cadetship, it is a sort of a steep learning curve. So you went full in for it, and away you go. How have you found it on the bachelor's? Was it a struggle in the end, the learning curve, or did you manage to pick it up quickly?
I wouldn't say I picked it up quickly. I'll be honest, it was very difficult last year. I feel like this year, because I feel like I got unlucky with the class I have. We all help each other. We're quite a close bunch and we all help each other. But yeah, I did struggle last year. I would say everyone kind of struggled, even people who are academically very intelligent. They struggled because it is a hard thing. You're like going straight into it and it's a bit like, whoa, that's very quick.
Yeah. And just for context, you're both in phase 3. So you've done phase 1 and passed your academics. You've been to sea and you're now back doing your second year of academics, what we call the phase 3. So Eddie, if we sort of go back to the cadet experience itself, obviously you've had a phase at sea. What were the typical sort of cadet routines that you experienced? So what were the routines, the duties and expectations of a cadet on board ship?
So I was on a cruise ship. So there's obviously a lot going on. There's a lot of people there. A lot of the roles are already filled. So for me, it was the case of they give you to like a third engineer. you go around on their responsibilities, how they run the watch. I was on day work for my entire time on ship, so I spend some time with the third engineers, sometimes with mechanics, motormen, whoever was doing something that was applicable to what I need to learn. And then other than that, you sort of were given a bit of free range to go off and complete TRB tasks, which are training and record book tasks, and anything else that you need to get done for either your own progression or to help out someone else in the team.
Yep. What about yourself, Sophie? What was it like joining ship for the first time? What were the routines and duties that you were given? Cruise liners again, I assume?
Yes, it's cruise liners. It was good. I can't really. I joined and I got food poisoning when I joined. So it was a bit of a rough start because I got isolated. But after that, it was good. I put on day work for 2 weeks, I think, in the beginning, just to get used to the ship. And then they put me on watch with a second and third engineer. And with that, I just followed around the third engineer, and they sometimes let me do stuff, obviously, with supervision. But yeah, they were very good at letting you be like, they'll give you stuff to do, and they'll be like, oh, you can do it. And it was quite nice because obviously it makes you feel like you've got responsibility, a little bit of responsibility.
Yeah, so you felt that they empowered you to succeed and sort of drove you forward.
Yes, sometimes.
Yeah, but it's a balancing act, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, when you're on board, I think although we're training and we're learning as cadets, we are still continuously in operation. So again, if you're just going to sit back and let the world go by, you're not going to be able to get involved. Eddie, how did you sort of push yourself to get the TRB tasks done and get involved? Did you have a certain tactic or an approach?
My approach was, because I was very much given my own time, I would find something that I wanted to do and then talk to the second or third or sometimes even staff and say, when is this happening and when can I jump on to find out how it's done? Sometimes they say, oh, it's happening tomorrow, or they go, oh, that might not happen for another few weeks. So then you might talk to another engineer, second, third, or AC and say, are you doing anything I can do? And if it fits into TRB, then that was perfect. If not, then I could do an extra task or something else.
Yeah, so you certainly felt that forward thinking and driving it forward yourself with that balance of understanding that busy was the way forward that worked for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sophie, how about yourself? How did you sort of go about getting those tasks signed off, getting involved with the engineers?
It was pretty much the same. Obviously, I feel like our engineers were very involved as well. Some of them, and then others obviously didn't want much to do with us. But um, I think a lot of them were like, "Oh, show us your TRB. What do you have to do?" Which was really good. Um, yeah, it was pretty much just go and ask them what they're doing, and then try and, or if you're walking around the engine room and you see someone doing something, you'd be like, can I join?
Yeah,
But
definitely involved.
yes, most of the time they're all right with it.
And in terms of the app onboard training, we sort of briefly talk about getting involved with the engineers, working through the TRB. What about the shore-based training? We touched on it briefly. How did you find balancing theory with practical and the combination between the two? Eddie?
I think so. For obviously in university, we do systems, which is study of all the systems on the ship. That plays in really easily because you find a system on a ship, you find what you've learned in class, and then you can sort of transfer both across and put two and two together. In terms of balancing, keeping up with the other subjects like science and maths, it's not the easiest because you've got a lot to do on ship already. There's already a lot to study, and then you've got to find extra time to try and keep in with that. But as long as you set aside a few hours a day, it's not too bad.
So it's balancing the workload really is a real key sort of aspect, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Sophie, what about yourself? How did you find the shore-based training and balancing that with the onboard training?
I feel like balancing it was very hard because I got put on watch pretty quickly, and it was just very exhausting being like at the end of your watch, obviously all you want to do is maybe sleep or like have food, then go sleep. So to like have to focus on maths or thermodynamics or something like that seemed a bit impossible. Obviously, things from the theory part of learning it helped understanding it. It was very interesting to go on board and actually see how everything works as well, because it was like, oh, like I thought I understood that, but now I properly know how it works.
And I think that's a big thing with the engineering side. You do a lot of topics, and sometimes it's hard to go, well, what's that got to do with this? And actually, it's not until you get on board ship and you start to see it, and then it's tied in with the thermodynamics, with the refrigeration plant and the boiler systems, etc., and it starts to all come together. And I think that's a really interesting sort of aspect to talk about, is that realization of when you go to see, oh wow, this stuff is real. Sophie, what was the initial culture shock and adapting to life at sea like?
I feel like the culture shock for me was that there was so many cultures on board, and obviously some cultures do not get along, and you want to try and be friends with everyone, but then they some of them don't like each other, and you don't want to like offend anybody by like being friends with someone, and you're like, oh, how do I do this? It was very difficult to balance that. Um, but I would say it was pretty good. Obviously, culture wise, there's some people that don't believe that women should be on board, which you just have to kind of accept it and move forward, really.
Did you have many sort of problems? How many other females were on board? Was it something you felt empowered to be on board, or where was your feelings on it? Because there's been a lot of work in the maritime industry to raise the profile and educate people, and we are seeing more and more women in maritime, which is certainly the way it should go. What was your feelings on board?
I didn't really mind. Most of the time it was all right. Obviously, there was the thing of they were trying to be nice, but sometimes they'd be like, "Oh, let me lift that. Let me do this for you. Let me do that." And I'm like, "That's thank you, but I can do it on my own. Just leave me." And I had another cadet, Charlotte, on board, and you just really had to tell them, let us do stuff and put them back in their place. That some of them didn't necessarily like that, and then other people were like very empowering and were like, "Yes, do it," and would always try and get us involved, which was nice.
Yeah, so it's a balance in that, and I think as the industry continues to develop its awareness and we educate culturally, certainly women in maritime, it's not a boundary anymore. That the stigma is being sort of eradicated, and we're seeing more and more women take that leap into maritime and sort of be empowered by the move and the opportunities it sort of holds. Uh, Eddie, what about yourself? Any initial culture shocks or period of adapting to life at sea?
Oh, I'd probably say the same as Sophie. Like, it's just there's so many different types of people on board that you get, and you don't quite know how to interact with some people or who you can talk to about what. So it's learning about who you can talk to, when you can talk to them, how to talk to them, especially with the me, there's a language barrier because sometimes I don't necessarily speak clearly. So especially in the engine room, that's a bit difficult because you try and say something to them and they already don't speak English as fluently as you, and then they're trying to understand you in a busy environment, which is quite difficult. That was probably the main thing, just different types of people.
Yeah, I think I remember when I went to sea for the first time again, I worked on Commodore Goodwill for my first vessel, and we had Ukrainian crew on board. And again, it was difficult, let alone in an engine room with an engine running with your ear defenders on and everything else. It gets rather noisy rather quickly, and things can be sort of misinterpreted. And it is a real steep learning curve, but I think you both agree it's a really exciting one, and you grow up so fast. Sophie.
Yeah, I was just gonna bounce off that, saying, yeah, it's you learn quite quickly how to interact with different cultures. I know I struggled a lot because sometimes I'm a bit sarcastic, and a lot of them don't understand sarcasm. So I was just like, no, I don't mean that. Sorry. And then you just learn not to do it.
Yeah, adaptation's a huge thing in the industry. So looking at the training path itself, obviously both engineers, which is my personal bias, of course, as an ex-engineer, engineering cadet and officer myself. So let's briefly sort of talk over the different subjects, the different content that we have to look at. So Sophie, if we start with you, what are some of the core skills that an engineer cadet needs to have?
I would say the one that I struggled with was probably the maths. You have to be not a genius at maths, but you have to have a decent knowledge of maths. Obviously, the more you have knowledge-wise, the better. If you're pretty like mechanically aware of how things work, it's good. Um, Also, I feel like a big thing that people don't talk about is like the willing to learn and not just like being like, oh, I'm doing this to get the job. Because if you actually like learning, you like learning how things work, it helps a lot.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think a big part of that is drive. And unfortunately, and we're going to say it, if you don't like maths, engineering is probably not the route for you, because there's a lot of it. But I think the difference is it's applied maths. A lot of it is providing context to it and trying to relate it to systems and things like that. Eddie, could you just give us an overview of the different subjects you've had to study within the engineering program so far?
Yeah, so the main subjects are maths and science, which is science of thermodynamics and mechanics, and then systems as well, which is obviously your main. Well, I think most people view it as the main subject because that's where you're going to study the most applicable things for ship. And then also electrotechnology, which is sort of electrical engineering, with a focus on how it applies to mechanical.
Yeah, and Sophie, you're in the level 5 studies at the moment. So again, introducing naval architecture into that as well, which Eddie you'll be doing in sort of phase 5. So it's quite broad. There's lots of different things, and you do cover things like diesel engines, pumps, sewage treatment plants. But of course, you both get workshop time as well. So there's a period of workshop skills that gives you 4 months remission time on the sea time. So hence why engineering cadets, their requirement is 8 months sea time over the deck, which is 12. How did you find the workshop skills, Eddie?
Yeah, workshop, I really enjoyed it because I quite like doing the hands-on stuff. And it was a good time to sort of test how well you do with, here's a hunk of metal, turn it into this, and then we're going to test how close to get to the boundaries. So I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and Sophie, could you just give us a brief overview of the different things you did in the workshop skills?
You do filing, a lot of filing. You can do welding, there's power plant, there's the electrical.
A broad range of skill sets then. And that's sort of done over a series of phases. So currently with the new cadet modernization, that's done in phase 1 and phase 3. And you sort of do different bits of the skill set, and you start to complete what we call the workshop skills records, and you get as little packs to complete, which aren't too sort of tasking. So Sophie, what do you feel the key challenges were to life at sea from yourself and perhaps from some of the colleagues you saw?
Um, I would say being away from my family because we're a very close family. Even though I was away for university as well, it was just a bit different because you can't just phone them quickly and you're not always in the mindset to phone them. Also I feel like if for other people maybe relationships it's hard. When you're at sea you can't maintain, well you can, it depends on the person, but it's very difficult to maintain a healthy and stable relationship because the Wi-Fi connection or other things, you might just be tired after watch. That and also just keeping a good balance in health-wise sports. I'm big into my sports, so it was difficult to be like, oh, I actually don't have the energy to do this. Diet purposes, a lot of people struggled with. Yeah, just it's difficult to balance everything, just regular things that you would do obviously in your home, your apartment. Um, it's just weird because it's like, oh, or like living with someone. I struggled with that a lot. Even though we got along with my roommate, it was just like, I'm with you constantly. It's just a big shock for people that are not like obviously in boarding school or
Yeah, and it's again for all the challenges, and we'll get onto it in a minute, there's an awful lot of pluses as well. So, Eddie, what about yourself? What were the common challenges you saw within life at sea?
Yeah, it's similar to Sophie, and like it's the big change of whatever routine you had at home, you no longer have. It all changes. I mean, I was lucky enough to have sort of a regular working day, whereas on day work, I worked 8 until 6, and then I had my evening to do what I needed to do. So I could go to the gym, I could get dinner at the same time. Even then, everything's different. It's not quite the same. Like Sophie says, talking to people at home is difficult because one, you might be a few hours, there might be a few hours difference between you, and yeah, you might be tired, you might not want to call someone, you might not want to sit on the phone for half an hour chatting. So keeping in contact with people and keeping your routine steady isn't the easiest, but you do adapt to it. It only takes a minute. I think it took me a few weeks to get comfortable.
Yeah, and Sophie, how did you deal with sort of the shipboard hierarchy? Because again, a lot of people aren't used to hierarchy and ranks and things like that. How was that for you? What was there an issue with hierarchy, or did you find it pretty easy to sort of slip into that sort of mindset?
I find it pretty easy. Obviously, I grew up with my dad being a chief engineer, so we've always seen it. I've always been on boats, and yeah, I kind of just it was pretty easy. You've got the odd like I found it hard because there'd be like look a higher person, either like staff, chief, or first engineer or something, and then there'd be a lower down person, and then they would just sometimes talk to the lower down people a bit like not rudely, but then you just be like, oh, you don't need to say it like that. You could easily say it in a nice way, but then that's just life, and you move forward, really.
I think sometimes people don't realize that perhaps the way they're coming, especially with age differences, cultural differences, and it's understanding and just taking someone to one side if you feel aggrieved and just say, did you mean it like that? Because 9 times out of 10, my experience says they didn't. And actually, it's just understanding how someone else reciprocates the information. And from my sort of time at sea, if you go to someone and say, "Oh, why did you put it like that?" They don't get upset about it. Most of the time it simply is a misunderstanding. So I think having that open platform is really key. Eddie, what about yourself? Shipboard hierarchy.
I think it's weird because as a cadet, obviously you're at the bottom of the hierarchy, but you work at different times with different people. So I spent quite a lot of time with my staff chief. So then you get some of the lower guys saying, "Oh, you spend a lot of time with staff. Are you staff's best friend?" And then you'll spend a week straight with mechanics that in the engine room working on the engine. Mainly did the engine overhaul where I didn't see any of the officers for a whole week. So it just depends on where you're doing it. But I think our team was quite good in the sense that everyone had, I feel like, the right amount of respect to who was above them and who was below them. Yeah, like Sophie says, sometimes you'll hear someone say something where you think that's not what I would say, but I think it's a cultural thing sometimes. Like they might talk about that completely normally at home, and that's fine. But then for some people, it's not. So it's just a balancing act of realizing what they're meant to say and what they're saying.
Yeah, I think that's really key. So moving on to sort of the key skills and attributes of an engineer on board ship. So what do you think the key skills and attributes are that, you really need to be considering on board ship, Sophie?
I would say the biggest is staying calm. I see so many people start to panic. And then this is where experience takes over skill. Like there'd be the first engineer that's been doing this for how many, I don't know how many years, probably like 30 years. And it really shows that like they know what they're doing. And also I feel like a big one is talking to people. You need to it's difficult being away from home. I feel like you need to know how to talk to the people that you're with, make sure they're all right, because you never know what people are really going through. You don't know people's lives and all of that. I found that difficult because everyone's got a different life, and it's like I would like to say my life's pretty easy, and I was just like, wow, you've had it tough life, and it's just very, very important not to like offend anybody with what you're saying because you never know what they've been through.
I think showing a lot of humility is really key. Eddie, what about yourself? Any additional ones to that?
I think in terms of like learning as a cadet, you got to be a bit determined. because there's going to be things you don't understand. You need to tell yourself you need to go away and actually learn it and not just hope someone tells you it. Because a lot of the time they won't want to teach you it. They'll want to let you go and find out about it and then tell them. And if you're wrong, they'll explain. But it's more of a learn yourself. They can correct you if you're wrong, sort of thing, rather than get everything handed to you. And yeah, like yourself, I agree with the military thing. Is everyone's got different experiences and different of life, so just learn to accept that.
Yeah, and I think a couple of ones I've got: time management, discipline, essential teamwork skills are just a couple there. Especially with, I always like to think the engineers are a real tight knit group, and anyone at sea really. But when it starts getting difficult, we've got to pull together and work hard. So yeah, I sort of echo all the sort of points you sort of mentioned. So in terms of career progression, then. That's Eddie. What's the aspiration? Where after the cadetship? Where are we looking to go?
My aspiration changes on a daily, I think. Sometimes I fancy yachts, sometimes I fancy research vessels. I've sort of swayed myself off of the idea of cruise ships, not because I had a bad experience, just because it wasn't 100% for me. And I find the idea of something like a research vessel a lot more interesting. So I think at the moment it's research vessels or yachts.
And in terms of ranking and longevity?
Longevity, I plan to stay at sea for quite a while, at least sort of 5, maybe 10 years. And hopefully, at least seconds, firsts. I'm not sure about chiefs, quite happily being an officer of rank, but we'll see.
Yeah, everyone's different. Everyone's got to find their own route and their own pathway. Sophie, what about yourself? Where are you looking to get to? Where's Sophie in 10 years?
Obviously, everyone thinks about this a lot. I would say mine so far has stayed pretty much the same. I feel like I'll maybe stay, if Fred Olson wants me, I'll probably stay with Fred Olson until maybe seconds or even maybe more. But I would eventually, maybe in 10 years, go on yachts and then perhaps become chief. Obviously, see my dad being a chief engineer, there's a lot of stress and that comes with it, and you don't quite know if you really want the full responsibility of the being chief. So I haven't quite decided on that one yet, but definitely would like to continue a long time in this career.
And being a chief engineer is not for everyone. Not everyone wants to be the leader of men and women and things like that. It's not everyone's cup of tea. Some people, they find their sweet spot. They just do. So in terms of career planning, what would you advise anyone looking to do a cadetship or in a similar sort of phase? What would be your top tips for them in terms of career planning, Eddie?
From the beginning, when you're looking at cadetships, definitely do a lot of research into which company you want to go up to, because your company that manages you is very important. I was quite lucky to be with Watermark. Make sure you know which department you want to end up in, because electrical and engineering, those two are quite common for people that are like interested in working with vans and mechanics, but it's not always the right path. So I don't know much about the decky side of it. I just know that for me, that definitely wasn't the route. And just make sure it's definitely what I want to do. It's not exactly a small commitment.
Sophie, what about yourself?
I would definitely say make sure, yes, you're determined academically wise, because it is a very difficult course. Also, one that I feel like is not said enough is be confident in yourself, like especially for mental health purposes. I would say you have to be, especially as a woman, you have to be very confident in like who you are and where you stand. It's I would definitely say it's not for the weak. It's obviously being around men all the time, they point out stuff. So yes, definitely to be confident. Yeah, pretty much same what Eddie said about you have to know where you want to go. So do plenty of research on the companies as well.
Yeah, and I think resilience is a huge thing. It doesn't matter who you are. As a woman at sea, did you feel supported?
Yeah, I suppose so. It didn't really bother me to be honest, because I've grown up around the like engineering thing and around a lot of men, so it doesn't really bother me. If someone bothers me, I'll tell them, kind of thing. Um, so it's, I suppose so. I didn't really need it, so I can't really say. But there was always these things of like mental health on board, and they would always put them on the walls and everything, because it's, especially with a cruise ship, there's so many people, they can't go one by one and be like, "Are you all right?" So yes, I feel like there was plenty of support on board.
So, just going on to a few bits and bobs. Eddie, most memorable voyage?
Oh, probably, obviously cruise ships, you do the same thing week in, week out. So probably the transfer between Canary Islands and the Mediterranean, because you saw two different places and you spend 2-3 days straight at sea. For us was the longest time we spent, out of voyage. So yeah, probably the transfer between Canary Islands and Mediterranean.
Brilliant. Sophie, mistake that taught you the biggest lesson?
Probably watertight doors. I don't know if I should say this. I went through a watertight door and I was just opening it at the same time. Obviously, was in a rush, went through it. First engineer saw me, got pretty angry at me, which is fair. And yeah, I would say that definitely taught me a bit, because there was like, I got yelled at in front of everybody, and there was like a good 20-30 people, and I was just like, oh, okay.
But again, let's look at it another way. You won't ever do it again.
No, trust me. That's why I think probably,
Let's
I don't think,
learn, right?
yeah.
Eddie, what would you say to a aspiring cadet on the best way to prepare before joining a ship?
Before joining the ship, do a bit of research about the ship itself, find out some information on, where it's been, if you can find who you might be working with. Say, for example, like find your chief on LinkedIn or something, and see a bit about what they've been up to. Make sure that you know how to contact your family, what the deal is with contacting home, and doing something to keep yourself entertained. Because there's going to be, even though you've got a lot to do, there's going to be a lot of downtime. So, keep saying to get you going.
Brilliant. Sophie, mindset for success during training?
Just keep going. Even when it gets hard, just keep going. There's moments where you'll think, what am I doing here? And you just have to think of the end goal, really. It's not like, oh, I'm the best, I'm the strongest. You might not be the best, you might not be the strongest, but you just have to keep on going and say, I'm going here and this is what I'm doing, really.
Yeah, so a focused goal, and again, it's that word resilience. So in terms of obviously your decisions to do the engineering route and come on a cadetship, Sophie, thoughts? Do you love it? What do you like it? What are your thoughts? Would you recommend it?
I love it. I honestly, it's what I have always wanted to do. I found a yearbook that I did when I was like 10 that said, "Where do you see yourself in 15 years?" And I put on boats. So it's always what I've wanted to do. And just being at sea really made me realize, oh, this is nice. I like it. Would I recommend it to anybody? It depends on the person, really. I wouldn't recommend it to anyone who wants to be a really big family person, because it's hard, or maybe I don't know, because I've obviously not got a family, like my own family, so it's not, but it's very hard to balance it. Seeing it as someone who is like a daughter of someone who goes away, it's very difficult. You have to deal with the like saying goodbyes, which is quite a difficult thing. Um, it just depends. I would recommend it to someone who is like me, who's obviously not got a family and is young. But yeah, it is difficult.
Yeah, and again, we've done an episode on Is This Right for Me, the industry, and an episode on Going to Sea where we talk about setting expectations. Are you fit for the industry, but is the industry fit for you? So you've made some really important things to note, because it does draw a lot of factors, and the industry is very spectacular, and it is a bit of a glory industry in some aspects, where you think about where you can go, what you can see, and there's so many opportunities, but it doesn't fit everyone, and that's really key. Eddie, what about yourself?
It's the cadetship itself is a bit of a love-hate relationship, because sometimes you really enjoy it, and then sometimes you'll start staring at a mechanics question that you absolutely hate and you want to leave. But that entirely depends. No, in general, I really enjoy it. I think it's a good thing. For me, it's right, because, like Sophie said, it depends on who you are. And I'm not a big family person, so like in terms of my own, I like exploring different places, meeting new people, doing things. I've always been interested in engineering, so it definitely depends on who you are. But for me, I really enjoy it.
Okay, so we're just coming to the end. So got some quick fire questions, and just going to fire at you. Just really quick sort of answers. Sophie, first impression of the first ship you joined?
Wow. It's big. How am I ever gonna find my room? How am I gonna find the workshop? Friends, that's what I found was difficult. Obviously different cultures. You're like, oh, how am I gonna fit in?
Good. And Eddie, biggest shock at sea?
Shock. Tricky one. Probably trying to get the language barrier.
Yeah, good. This one's for both of you. We'll go to you, Eddie, first. Favorite port or memory?
Port would be, I think, Rhodes. It's an interesting one. And memory, I don't really have a favourite memory, so probably just Rhodes.
Sophie, what about yourself? Favorite port or memory?
Port, I would probably say Funchal, like slash memory, because we went to like all you can eat sushi with the people I worked with, and it was really fun. Or Split, Croatia, that was also really fun because we went out there as well. And it was just like everyone was together. It was very fun.
Brilliant. And last one for you both. So we'll come to you first. One thing you tell your pre-sea self.
Oh. um Do the drawings quicker. Do the drawings quicker. End of reports. Do them straight after you've done a task.
Eddie, what about yourself? One thing you tell your pre-sea self.
So along with similar lines, but if don't be lazy and get your work done as soon as you can.
Good. So they're mature answers. Most people go for something fun, but it's a big fact. And thank you very much for your honesty. Thank you both for taking part. It is greatly appreciated. And thank you very much to Just Be Maritime and Watermark for allowing you to come and support this project. For anyone who does want any support or guidance on engineering cadetships, there's lots of resources out there in terms of careers at sea or on the BMTA website. And if anyone has any specific questions, please do email in at info@bmta.net. Other than that, if you've enjoyed this podcast and you'd like to give back, please do donate to our charity of the year. Details can be found on our website and our YouTube channel. Other than that, that leaves me to say thank you very much and see you next time.